So Trevor, my man, let's spend a little bit of time on game wreckers. We're not going to spend like two whole segments, one on offense, one on defense. We're going to kind of shorten it a little bit and go to one because we have so many great buy-sell holds that we want to get to, and we don't want this to be a 5-hour show. I definitely don't want it to be a 5-hour show. Trev might actually kind of still be into the 5-hour show thing. He's young, he's newly married, wife's at work, you know what I mean? Like he's still getting used to this. He may be okay with that. I'm old. I'm cranky. I don't want a 5-hour show today. But I want to get to all those questions, and there's a ton of great ones. So let's get into this game wreckers, Trev, because against Navy, we've seen in the past, when you really play well and dominate them, it's because guys step up and take over a game. We've seen it offensively. Michael Floyd, Golden Tate, a running back goes off. I mean, I thought last year Jaden Thomas in the first half of that game was just a beast in that matchup. We've seen over the years different players step up and really take over that game. Defensively also, you see a bunch. I mean, I still remember – I'm trying to remember what year it was. I think it was 2006 where Notre – I think it was 06. I'm going to see if I can find that box score. I don't know if they'll have stats for that game. Yes, they do have stats for that game. Oh, they don't have defensive stats. Remember, I think it was like 05, 06 when Chinedum and Dukwe had like 20-something tackles against Navy. There was a year in like 2010 or 2011 where Harrison Smith just went off and had a ton of tackles, against Navy. So, I mean, you see those things, Trev, where you're like, somebody takes that game over and really does some impressive things. I'm actually going to try and find that game that that Harrison Smith had. I'm pretty sure it was against Navy. Let's see tackle totals. He had, 2010. Can I get there? They're only going to give me 2010, huh? That's disappointing. I wanted to see different stats, but I remember one of the years where Harrison Smith went off, and I don't know if it was 11 or 10 or 9, but where he had a bunch of tackles. I think Kyle McCarthy had a bunch of tackles against them one year, and so who's going to be that guy this year? Who's going to step up and be that kind of game wrecker for Notre Dame on both sides of the ball? We have some ideas on who we want to be or who we think it could be or should be. And we'll discuss that now, Trevor. We'll begin with the offense. And really this one is not complicated. The first one it's Riley Leonard. I mean, if your offense is going to move the ball consistently, put points on the board, make the big plays, and just not only ideally jump all over Navy while your defense makes a couple stops, or keep up early in a shootout while your defense is getting caught up, because this is the kind of game, if they jump out to a 14-0 lead, you're not going to have a whole lot of possessions left to kind of get that thing back. The margin for error is thin. Your defense is going to have to basically be perfect the rest of the way. You've got to either match their scoring early, or if your defense is actually playing well early, before Navy adjusts and finds answers, and they will, you've got to jump ahead of them. And now you're the one making them play behind the 8 ball. They can't go as slow because now they have to be perfect on both sides of the ball to catch up. This is not a game where anybody wants to fall behind 2 scores. And the best way for Notre Dame to have that happen is Riley Leonard comes out and just has this is the Riley Leonard we've been waiting to see all year, making smart decisions throwing the ball, getting the ball down the field, and just making tons of plays as a scrambler and as a runner. And it just makes it impossible to stop Notre Dame from scoring, because you think you have him figured out, and then Riley does something crazy, runs for 15 yards in a play where he should have been sacked, and goes off. Like, to me, Riley Leonard's got to be the #1 game record in this game.
Offensive efficiency is always key when you play Navy, right? And who are you going to look to kind of lead that charge? It's a guy under center, right? Now, with us saying Riley Leonard, it's a given that, yes, the offensive line also has to block well, and run blocking and pass blocking. The receivers have to do their job.
There's certain things that are kind of like assumed.
Right.
You're not going to win games if your offensive line's trash, if your receivers 100%. Drop 8 balls. Right. But they just kind of, the thing about this team, Trevor, to your point, is the O-line just has to kind of just do your job. They don't need the offensive line to, oh my gosh, did you see them blowing them off the ball? I thought Sam Pendleton looked like Quentin Nelson reincarnated. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, it'd be great, but they don't need it. Just do your job. Riley, however, needs to be great in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Riley Leonard needs to go be the guy that everybody thought that he was going to be on August 31st when he came and started playing at Texas A&M, right? So gonna be interested to see how he plays, and because I'm not saying he has to go and put on the Superman cape for Notre Dame to have a chance to win this game, but he needs to go and
Wouldn't
do
hurt.
the things that he needs to. Listen,
It
I would
wouldn't
not be
hurt.
upset. I would not be upset if that happens, if he has like a 2019 Ian Book type of performance against Navy. But he just needs to go out and be the clear-cut leader of the offense for 4 quarters, right? We have seen Riley Leonard do things in spurts. I've seen Riley Leonard have a really good quarter passing, and I've seen Riley Leonard have a really good half passing. But there's just some things that I just, you need to see him be more of a consistent factor in the offense. It's not he came alive for the second quarter and then kind of tailed off for a little bit. It's got to be something that's consistent for 4 quarters, and that's why I think that he's got to be the top game wrecker. I agree with you, Bryan.
Now, along with that, you've got the 2 running backs.
Mm-hmm.
These are your best players. In big games, your best players have got to be your guys. And that's why you start with Riley, because he's the quarterback. He's one of your best players. Riley's your most valuable player. We've talked about this. Jeremiah Love's your most outstanding player. But there have been other times this year when your most outstanding player has been number 24. Yeah. And you're going to need all 3 of them to be at their best. And this is a game we talked about the rushing numbers. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price. When you get holes, do something with it. Protect the football. Make those plays. The game, they're going to be focal points of the game plan. They've got to be more efficient, Trevor, because you pointed something out. Like, I think it was yesterday's show, or maybe it's just you and I talking. Mm-hmm. They kind of bleed together sometimes. But Jeremiah Love has not really gone off running the football in recent weeks. A lot of it, like he had the one big run against Stanford, but a lot of his big plays the last few games have been, he's had a couple big touchdown runs. A lot of his stuff has come in the pass game, but Jadarian Price has been sort of the big play guy, or the focal point guy in the last couple of games. He was certainly the big play weapon in the run game on Saturday against Purdue, against Georgia Tech. But that's what makes this team so dangerous, Trevor, is like, okay, you bottle up Jeremiah Love. Your whole game plan built around stopping Jeremiah Love. So what does that do? That opens up RPOs against you, and it opens up slant routes, and now all of a sudden Jadarian Price goes off and Riley Leonard goes off, and you want to stop Jadarian. Okay, fine. Jeremiah Love's going to go off. You stop the 2. You're so focused on stopping those 2 running backs like Miami of Ohio was. So you leave Riley Leonard open for 143 rushing yards.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, that's the thing where you look at it and it's like, dude, this is the thing. It's like, you kind of got to pick your poison a little bit. And in this kind of game, 2 top 25 teams, all 3 of them, they got to be at their best. They got to take this game away. This would be a great game for both of them to finally get back on track together. And we haven't seen that in a few weeks.
I was just about to say, one of the most glaring games that they did it together was the Purdue game, and they had over 360 rushing yards of offense, right, as a team. So to provide a little bit of context, against Georgia Tech, Jeremiah Love had 2.6 yards per carry, and against Louisville, he had 3.1 yards per carry. So now Jeremiah Love is also a guy where you look at total output on offense, right? But from strictly running the football standpoint, we took a look a little bit ago about what Navy's defensive numbers are when it comes to defending the run game. There's got to be a game where that 3-headed monster kind of comes back alive. Now, I'm not saying run Riley Leonard 15 times, but I'm saying, how about we get Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price kind of into that rhythm that they haven't had in a while, taking care of the football, hitting holes, being explosive, running the ball efficiently, not so much 1 gain, 2-yard gain, 37-yard gain, 1-yard loss. A very efficient style of offense is going to bode well for him.
That's the offensive game wreckers. And obviously, Trevor, we'll just say it again. Somebody in the pass game. I'm so sick of talking about this. It's like the same thing, but just somebody in the pass game's got to step up. And I don't mean for like a couple slant. Somebody's got to step up and have a day. Not just kind of, because like the receivers have been just doing their job, doing what's asked of them for the most part. Somebody's got to step up and have a day. Somebody's got to be given an opportunity to step in and have a day with the game plan. And that comes down to like Riley's got to get the ball out and do all that. But like Bo Collins did a nice job against Georgia Tech. I need him to catch that that go ball. That's a break their back type of big play. Jaden Greathouse had the one, the slot fade to start the second half, would set up your first touchdown to kind of put that game away. And then we don't see him used a whole lot more like it. So it's partly players got to step up and make plays. And then also you got to give guys more opportunities, but somebody in the pass game's got to step up and have a big day. Like, you talk about taking games over like Jaden Thomas did 2 years ago. Jaden Greathouse had, what, 2 touchdowns in the game against them last year? I mean, and it was a bunch of – I mean, Deion Colsey had a great catch against them last year, if you remember correctly. Jaden Greathouse went off on him a little bit. Jaden Thomas had had a really good game against him. I mean, so these are all guys that you had on your team last year. You know, these aren't a bunch of like, those guys are all gone. You know, you think about Chase Claypool in 2019 going off. I mean, somebody's got to step up and say, hey, man, I'm taking this ball game over. And, that's the final game record. Let's move over to the defense. And we already talked about one. It's a given. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it. The interior defensive line has to be great. And it's not just Mills and Cross because they can't play every snap. It's got to also be Rubio, and it's got to be Donovan Heinisch. I could see a scenario where Notre Dame has 3 of those guys on the field at the same time at times on first or second down if they wanted to go to kind of like an odd look maybe. And I could honestly see something where like you put Howard Cross or Riley Mills in there instead of RJ Oben, and then you'd have Josh Burnham as sort of like that 4th edge guy, and then maybe a linebacker at times. I mean, I could see them doing some things like that. I don't know if they will or won't. I'm just saying I could see it. But the reality is those inside guys have to dominate. We've talked about that. We don't need to dive into that again. Let's talk some other game wreckers. And this is one that could be either a really good game wrecker for Notre Dame or a major concern for Notre Dame. This is the game where your youth at linebacker is your biggest concern going into the game, because so few of these guys have actually seen this in real. Like you had mentioned it before, Trevor, when we were talking before the show. Like, yeah, I know Drake Bowen played a couple snaps against him last year, and I know that Jaden Osbury got in, I think, late in the game for a couple snaps, but that's not meaningful snaps, right? Where this is their first game. Kingston hasn't faced this offense before. Jalen Steed has, but in different roles, potentially. This is that game where they could be your greatest asset because of their just physicality, their speed, their instincts are built to fly. You think you got the edge on a pitch. Next thing you know, Drake or Jaden or Kingston's Jalen Sneed is just flying to the ball, and in that potential 20-yard gain turns into a 3-yard gain, crashing the fullback. But it's also the game where I'm worried about them hitting the wrong gap on a trap, and it goes for 50, like we saw a couple years ago in 2022. Where they over pursue in the fullback. They think it's triple. They're getting outside, but it's really the quarterback duck, and so the linebacker just vacates that zone and he cuts it right up inside for a big gain. It's that back and forth. If they could, I think they're going to be game wreckers in this game. The question is, are they going to be game wreckers for Notre Dame, or are they going to be game wreckers for Navy? That's the question. And they have the talent to be game wreckers for Notre Dame. It's just the inexperience is the only thing that I'm concerned about. And being assignment incorrect in this game can be more damaging than any other team you play as a linebacker.
That's why Navy just poses such a threat, because Drake Bowen, even earlier this week in practice, he was asked a question about coming into his own, and he was talking about what he does in his process for preparation. You prep differently for Navy, man. You just do. That's a different type of football team. They do different things. You have to, in regards to trusting your eyes and how much they do in the backfield and how much they try to attack the seams. We spent the whole first part of the show talking about how Navy's offensive coordinator puts opposing defenders in a lot of one-on-one binds, especially in the seam and up the sideline. And if you remember last week, Notre Dame early in the game had some issues with Georgia Tech attacking the seam. So there's going to be some interesting things that are going to be on the linebacker's shoulders. Now, from a skill set perspective, I wholeheartedly believe that Drake and Jaden and Kaiser and Kingston and all those guys can run with Navy.
I left Kaiser out for a reason, because he's not the linebackers that I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Because he has faced this so much, just so
absolutely.
We're clear.
Yep, absolutely. And there's no question to me from a skill set standpoint that they have absolutely every physical capability and every physical tool in the world to hang with this team. But that's what makes Navy so dangerous, is because they have the identity of, most of the time we take the field, we're not the most athletic football team. We just do so much that we can take away that aspect of your team and we can still be successful. So I'm going to be really interested to see what the linebackers do, because Notre Dame's success on defense is going to come down to that, man. Yeah. It's going to come down to how well they play.
The cornerbacks are another one for me, Trevor, for the same exact reason. They could either be game wreckers for you or game wreckers for Navy. because I've never seen a triple option team stress corners more than what Navy's current offense does because of their enhanced pass game. Because like we talked about, they'll do these things with them where they'll kind of run a wheel and then somebody else comes right behind, like the wheel takes the corner and then that somebody else just follows right behind it, and they'll just do all these different things with it. And they do so much more to the perimeter now, quick to the perimeter with the jet sweeps, the power read, which includes a sweep off of that. They'll just pitch the ball out, which they've always done that. Now they're running tunnels, they're running now screen. I mean, they're trying to get the ball outside much quicker than they have in the past at times. That means your cornerbacks have got to be really good in that scenario. So Christian Gray and Leonard Moore, and I'm curious, is it just those two? Do they keep Jordan Clark inside? Do they maybe have Jordan Clark at times playing corner? You know, depending on how they, you know, is this a game where like this might be the first time in forever where I'm like, you might actually need your nickel against Navy and more of a, you know what I mean? Like, because they do so much with their slot and just lining them up in the slots and things like that. Your corners are going to get stressed in a big, big way. If they play well, they shut down the pass game to a degree. If they don't, then Navy's going to get some big plays, run game and pass game. Corners are going to be stressed in a big, big, big way in this game, and they've got to step up and be game wreckers, in my opinion. And then I think they can also get some balls. Like if the defense, if the front is able to put some pressure on the quarterback, you know, I could see some of those off-man cover throws that are going to a slot or underthrown a wheel route that your corners are in position to go make plays. And it's going to be very interesting to see. And we get a lot of questions. They're going to play more man or zone this week. And honestly, I'm always torn on that. But I kind of like the idea against this Navy team of playing more man against them and let your safeties kind of be the cleanup guys, because you start putting these guys in zone, that's how they get beat big, because they do so much to flood one part of the zone that it's either A, you don't have enough guys in a zone, or B, that creates miscommunication where the corner thinks the safety's doing this, the safety thinks he's got to do that. Next thing you know, they're running by him. I'm normally not a huge man guy against the option, but this is one of those weeks where I think outside you may need to do that. Just stick on that outside receiver. We'll have the safeties and linebackers handle the running backs. You know what I mean? We'll have Jordan Clark handle the slot guy. You guys just, if they're blocking, you're on them. If they turn and run, you turn and run with them. You know what I mean? And we'll let those other guys clean that stuff up. Because you just need to limit and we'll talk about this tomorrow, you need to limit those 50-plus yard gains in the throwing game. And I think this would be one of the few times I've ever said, this might be a game you want to go man against an option. Normally you run option against them, you run man against an option, you're just asking to be, you know, crushed on the outside. This is a little bit of a different animal.
I'm going to be interested to see what they do from a personnel standpoint as well in the secondary. And I'm kind of lumping corners and safeties in there together.
Yeah, because when you and I talked for the game, Trevor, I mentioned corners and you were like, I think this is going to be really big for the safety. So like talk about, and you're correct. So talk about why they are also going to be in great position to be game wreckers in this game.
Yeah, I mean, some of it you had already touched on with Notre Dame playing so much man and that being an identity of their defense. Safeties are going to play a role in kind of cleanup. I think you can kind of lump Jordan Clark more in with the safeties in a game like Navy and against that opponent. But Georgia Tech for the first quarter was doing some damage against Notre Dame in the seam, which Navy also likes to do. Sometimes they will even run their halfback on a wheel up the seam. So really it's not even up to the sideline. So eye discipline for safeties is going to be huge, right? And then you also have guys like Adon Schuler who flies downhill at the football, which typically you would think against an option team you would really like. But now that Navy kind of has this additional wrinkle to their offense and they're able to beat you over the top, it's one of those things where you don't want to play stagnant. You don't want to be scared that you'll get beat over the top. But Adon Schuler is going to have a lot of weight on his shoulders to not come flying downhill and see their H-back just kind of sneaking out past him behind the line of scrimmage. And then there he is wide open for 25-yard gain down the field. So the secondary as a whole is a really interesting thing for me to watch every single time that we play Navy. And I think safeties are going to play another role in that as well.
This could be a game where you see like Adon, for example, have like 3 or 4 just like highlight reel type hits, just blowing somebody up. And then if he's not disciplined, to your point, he also gives up a 60-yard touchdown. right? That's the worst place to be in as a safety, right? And that's the unique aspect of what they do. Because as I explained earlier, this is a game, and I've played and coached in triple option offenses. And as I said earlier, normally when you're playing a triple option offense and you play man, you're just asking to get ripped apart. You can play, I think you can do some man stuff outside. Absolutely. You can't at safety, right? Because otherwise there's going to be, it's so easy to take them out of the game. And then you get caught biting down. So either A, you don't fly downhill at all, and they're just gashing you with the run, or you fly downhill too quickly, but because you're in man, you now have to flip your hips and run with a seam route or a wheel route. Not happening. So that's the bind they put you in. So how do you design your coverages to that? And you can't run the same coverage every time, because, Trevor, you made a point yesterday. They do a great job of seeing what you're doing and finding answers for it. Like, they do a great job of that. And so they'll say, okay, you're going to motion your safeties across when we go, or cool, we got some things for you. Their ability to adjust in game is outstanding. Outstanding. And so like I said, I enjoyed watching this team on film. I did, because I can appreciate good coaching, even if it's in an offense that I don't like. And like I said yesterday, they run very little of the triple anymore, like very little. And most of the stuff that looks like triple isn't. It's the fullback dive is either it's just a dive, or he's just for show to get somebody to bite, and they're pulling in as a two-man option. I've broken down 4 games, and I've seen the number of plays where they just ran pure triple. I could count on maybe 2 hands, if not 1, of pure triple. Yeah. Not triple action where they're running it where it looks like it's just pure. That is a pure triple option read that the quarterback has. They just don't do as much of that anymore. And most option offenses don't do as much of that as people think. Like, again, coached in it, played in it, broken down Navy a million times. There's half the time they're not, in the past, they weren't running a pure triple. It would look like it, but the call was, it was really just a 2-man game or a 1-man game as well. So it's very interesting what they do, Trevor. And then, of course, they've incorporated a lot of the other stuff we talked about yesterday. So it's really fascinating to watch them play. It really is. And Notre Dame's going to have to be on top of their game. And they put so much stress in the secondary. Yeah. Way more than they have in the past. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this defense responds. No question. Anything else about the game wreckers, Trev, before we get into the BISA hold?
Nah, I think we crushed it. I think game wreckers are out there. We know what it is, baby. It's time for BISA hold. I'm pumped.
All right, let's do it. So we'll get into BISA hold next, folks. But before we do, y'all know the drill. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review, and, of course, make sure you sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com.